So I'm Carolyn Heeps. I'm Head of Offshore Wind for Fred Olsen Renewables. I've actually been in the industry quite a long time. I actually joined the Crown Estate back in 2001, and that's how I got involved in offshore wind. I ran the first two leasing rounds in the UK, which obviously helped to get the market off the ground. And UK is still the leading market in the world for offshore wind installation. So that's I suppose I've got some heritage in the offshore wind market. And I've also been privileged that through my career in offshore wind, I've also been able to get involved in other new emerging markets as well. But coming back to Fred Olsen Renewables, I was actually with Fred Olsen Renewables many years ago when I was working with them on a project which in fact we've recently rejuvenated, the Codling Wind Park project off Ireland. As well as some other offshore interests of theirs. Codling Wind Park is now a priority focus for me, and it in fact was in fact the largest project that was consented back in 2005 when we consented 1.1 gigawatts, which back in 2005 was unheard of. So even at that time, Ireland was actually leading the markets at that time, but because of some barriers and some challenges to actually deliver that project, Ireland has unfortunately fallen behind other markets, which are now maturing and consolidating and much larger. So it's good to be back in a market that now is, I suppose, reinventing itself and emerging because of some changes in policy, some new targets specific to offshore wind as part of a climate action plan. They have reformed their regulatory regime, and that's all helping us to deliver offshore wind in Ireland again, hopefully. I often say that in any market really there are several drivers that are going to be key to the success of that market, and I typically refer to a stable long-term policy. We've got to give developers certainty that there are targets within a market, that policy is going to be stable, and that's going to help to underpin the financeability of those projects. But also, of course, linked to that is a robust regulatory regime that is streamlined and also provides some certainty that as long as projects, are doing the right thing, they can get through that planning regime and can deliver. But also that regulatory regime must have some flexibility to take account of changes in technology and innovation to help reduce the costs as well. So cost competitiveness is very important. And then actually being able to sell your energy, sell your electricity. So having a route to market is critical as well. So if you've got a robust policy, you've got a good regulatory regime that's fit for purpose, you have that route to market either through auctions, some sort of CFD, an ability to secure PPAs, then that all gives a lot of certainty to the financeability of a project. And that is going to create an attractive market because it gives developers the opportunity to build a pipeline of projects. So you're not constantly getting to the cliff edge and wondering what's happening next. And that also helps the supply chain to develop and mature and become very cost competitive as well. We're seeing that some markets are very expensive to enter. If you now look at how the USA has developed over the last 7 years, we're now seeing significant sums of money changing hands to acquire a seabed lease. And so those are really now becoming markets that are for those players who have got a lot of money to spend and are very serious about getting into those markets. I think over the years we've also seen the increase in the consortium approach as well, because of those increased costs perhaps, but also at the same time the challenge to actually become more cost competitive and create competition in the supply chain and be able to help facilitate a local supply chain in a particular market. So I think we are going to see a lot of change over the next few years as well, whether that's ahead of UK round 4 which is going to be very competitive. But we're also seeing the ScotWind, the Scottish leasing round coming forward, as well as these new emerging markets. So I think it's a case of, yes, we'll see very large players. I hope that there are also going to be opportunities for the smaller players like Fred Olsen Renewables to get into those new emerging markets as well and create a niche where they can add value and create value throughout the supply chain. So it's going to be quite exciting times over the next few years as to how that shapes up in terms of some consolidation, an increased consortium approach, maybe 10 big players perhaps entering that, being involved in that market, but also the smaller developers wanting to also get a piece of the action as well.